Well, I hope you're all ready to be inspired. So thank you for coming and checking out our show. And for those of you on podcast, we are available on all the natural podcast outlets. It might be a bit weird just because we're showing stuff and talking about cards that you probably can't see, but at least you can hear and join in the fun. So again, like I said, are you all ready to be inspired? I definitely am. Definitely Kent is too. So let's first thank our guest and good friend Joey Oliveri for showing us his Goodwin Museum relics from last show. That young man had a bright future in space science, and I know we will hear from him again. I'm very hopeful that Joey will be a part of an important scientific breakthrough. Let me try that again. I'm hopeful that Joey will be part of an important scientific breakthrough in brain science that will allow space travelers to get to Mars in their lifetime. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, you just have to pay attention to our last show, and he goes into very much detail about that, and it was very interesting. So today we'll be interviewing Naim Cardinal, who is a collector of NHL rookie cards featuring Indigenous players. He has over 1,400 followers on his Instagram page, and he's been featured on a few podcasts and featured in the latest issue of Beckett magazine. Did you also know he's been on CTV News and other outlets? I learned that as well. Have you often wondered, who are these Indigenous players? Did you know that the great George Armstrong was Indigenous? What about Jordan Nolan? Ethan Bear? What about Brian Trottier? Just because their names aren't easy to recognize as Indigenous names doesn't mean that they aren't. For example, their names aren't Czech or Russian, allowing you to naturally assign a demographic parameter to player X, Y, or Z. Rightfully, we should be made aware of the great contributions these players have given to the community of hockey, either willingly or unwillingly by those around them. Indigenous culture is the catalyst of Canadian history and an important part of our hockey history. We owe a big debt of gratitude to those who skated before us, and for those who dream of standing on the blue line while listening to our Canadian national anthem in front of thousands of fans. For Kent and I, this show is about diversity and inclusivity, our collective focus and desire to show the general public aspects of our hobby that are not as well known and deserve a lot of attention. We were really excited to have Naim because it allows us a chance to learn, a chance to educate, a chance to skate together as a collecting family. Naim is carrying on the legacy of these players through his social media educational endeavors, and we're proud to have him on our show. Now let's drop the puck and bring on Naim. Hey, Naim.
Naim, welcome.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here. Hope you're both doing well.
We are. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Really happy to be on the show tonight, and just really grateful for the opportunity.
It's actually our pleasure. Like, we've been waiting a while to do this, so I'm finally glad to do this. It also allowed Kent and I to kind of dive into the internet to learn more about what you do, and I guess everyone who's going to be listening today will learn as well.
That's awesome.
So we're going to get onto some questions, Naim. So in terms of last show, I went first. So Kent, I'm going to let you go first.
Thanks, Amit. So Naim, could you kindly please tell us about yourself and your Indigenous background, please?
Yeah, so I'm Cree. In my language, we're called Nihiel. And I'm from a very small community in northern Alberta called Tall Cree First Nation, which is located in Treaty 8 territory. And my community is about 7 hours north of Edmonton, so we're pretty far north. But right now, I'm just living in Kelowna as a guest in Syilx Okanagan territory, and just really enjoying it here. But yeah, both of my parents are Cree. My wife is actually she's also First Nations. She's Secwepemc, which is also known as Shuswap, and her family is originally from the interior of BC, but she grew up in Maple Ridge. And yeah, our children are learning about both of those cultures all the time, and it's very important us to be able to share that with our kids, language and culture, traditions, history, experience, all that kind of stuff is very much one of our family values, and something that we love learning about too.
That's excellent. Thank you. So getting into your collection, who was your favorite player or team growing up?
Oh, growing up, my favorite player was Wayne Gretzky.
Oh.
Yeah, so I actually, like, I didn't, when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't even know who was like Indigenous and like who wasn't. Like, I had no idea there was even like First Nations players in the NHL. And I just saw who was there, and that's kind of who I was drawn to. So like when I was a kid, I loved Wayne Gretzky. I loved the Edmonton Oilers. I was very sad when he left, and I followed him to LA. Then I followed him to St. Louis, and then I followed him to New York. So I had a few favorite teams when I was growing up, but Oilers, like they were always stuck with me, and they've been pretty much like one of my favorite teams since I was a kid.
How about today? Still?
Yeah, I like the Oilers mostly because they have Ethan Bear, but I'm really starting to like Vegas. Like I just love the way they play, and I enjoy a lot of the players. Like Zach Whitecloud is on there, and he's a great up and coming defenseman. And I've always been a fan of Marc-Andre Fleury from the time he was in junior. So I've kind of followed his career too. You know, he's not Indigenous, but I just really enjoyed his the way he plays hockey, and the guy's he's a winner wherever he goes. And
That's true.
I didn't think he got a fair shake in Pittsburgh, but he's doing pretty well in Vegas.
I just can't dig the golden helmets. That's the only thing. When you said that, I'm like, oh, but they had the golden helmet. And you know why? I'm probably old enough. Actually, Kent's probably old enough. Naim, you're probably way younger than us. Al might remember, and Bobby, who are watching the show right now, is Tron. There was a movie Tron, and in Tron, the 80s version, actually, was there only 80s? I believe it was in the 80s.
It was 80s.
Yeah, and they had those helmets. And when you talk about the Vegas Golden Knights, I'm like, why am I drawn to Tron? Anyways, that's where I went with that. So I'll step back out of the limelight here.
So Naim, that kind of leads me into my next question. So how did you come to the decision to collect Indigenous rookie cards then?
Well, I've been collecting since I was a kid. I started collecting when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was at 8. The season was 89, 90 when I started collecting, and I collected right until about 1994, and I just started doing other things with my time. And I always loved collecting, and even today, like I always think about the way hockey cards made me feel when I was a kid, because like I would look at cards and I really loved hockey, so I would dream about, you know, being on a hockey card one day and like being a hockey player, and it just always gave me a good feeling, because when I think back about my hockey cards when I was a kid, I have a really a lot of great feelings associated with it and memories. So I started collecting again in 2004 after about 10 years off, and I got back into it like pretty quickly, and a really good year for rookies. Like 2003 or 4 was a ton of great rookies in that year, and I was really excited about collecting it, and I had no idea which direction I wanted to go. So I started like player collecting, because that's what everyone was doing when I was going on the Beckett boards and Hobby Insider, and everyone had player collection. So I was trying to decide who I wanted to start collecting, and I came upon Jay Bowmeister. So I actually had a pretty big Jay Bowmeister collection for a couple of years when I got back into collecting, and I don't know what it was, but it was just something that I couldn't stick to. So I dumped all my Jay Bowmeister cards. I dumped all the cards that I had, and I kind of like was kind of wavering about what I wanted to do. I started another player collection. Actually started collecting Rene Bourque, also Indigenous. And at the time, like I had no motivation to collect, or didn't even cross my mind to start collecting rookie cards of every Indigenous player. I just really liked Rene Bourque, and I knew he was Métis, and it was something I was drawn to. So I grew this massive like Rene Bourque collection, and I kind of got bored again, and I sold that collection off to my brother. It was pretty amazing collection that I have when I think back on it, and I wish I had a lot of those cards today. And those cards all wound up with a big Rene Bourque collector in Winnipeg, so they're pretty much locked up now. But I kind of went in and out of collecting for a few years, and I was just buying wax, pretty much like buying Upper Deck, and trying to get the big rookies, like just chasing after them, and just get like compiling massive piles of cards that I wasn't necessarily going to do anything with. So I just kind of came to a realization that, I need to start doing something that's making me enjoy the hobby, and it's going to keep me engaged over the years. And I remember sitting at the computer one evening and looking up some Indigenous players and just wondering, like, I wonder how many like Indigenous players there have been in the NHL. So I Googled it, and then I found this website called nativehockey.com. I went on there and had a list of like past players, current players, and I just decided that I think I'm going to try to get a couple of these guys and see where it goes. And I printed off the list, and that was kind of what started it and what kept me going. And and that's what made the hobby enjoyable again for me, because I wasn't trying to chase the next big player. I was going after things that made me feel good about collecting, and that gave me those really good feelings that I had when I was a kid and collecting, and that was something to it.
You know what? I wouldn't say don't feel bad. I think the majority of us, either watching or even in this display here, have all done the thing that you were talking about: buying wax and just breaking.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anybody that hasn't done that.
I also have like short-term memory in some of my collections. Like, oh, I'll collect this, and then I've forgotten about it. So it's like very, very short-term memory. It's interesting you bring up Jay Bouwmeester, because if I'm trying to recall, I believe he was I think he was drafted at the Air Canada Center or the Maple Leaf draft, held the draft that year. I'm trying to remember what year it was. What rookie year was Bouwmeester?
He was 0203, so that was 2002.
So I think it was the draft in Toronto. And I remember I dressed up in a suit to pretend I was an agent, so I could actually go sit down closer on the floor, and it worked. They saw me with a suit on, and they let me go sit, and I was like 4 rows back. And I remember to my right, there was a guy named Peter Tadachek. I think it was one of the guys. Peter, I mean, drafted by Florida. And anyway, Bouwmeester was the big guy in that draft among a couple other players. And I remember everyone was lining up for autographs, and I'm standing next to him, and he was my height. So I'm about almost 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", and I was like, wow, this is crazy. This guy's like my height, because you all picture hockey players to be larger than life, right? But when you meet them, except for Marty McSorley, that guy crushed my hand, but that's a different story. But seeing kids like that, and I'm like, these are just 18, 19-year-old kids, but they're like, built. They're big kids. So it's an interesting story. A memory I had when you mentioned that. Good thing you sold your Rene Bork collection. You probably got more for it now than you would have at this point.
Yeah, probably.
And at least you're for sure. So it's talking about the Indigenous rookie card. Did you ever expect to get as much attention as you've gotten now? Because you've been on CTV. So I found you do a CTV news thing. You did a Beckett magazine spread now just recently. You've been on Sports Cards Live with our good friend Jeremy. You've been in a couple other areas as well. You've got a website, got Twitter handles, and through your Twitter and Instagram, I found other people. So I'll save that for later on in the conversation. So why don't you go on about how you feel about all the attention you're getting so far?
Yeah, well, like, to be honest, when I started the collection, like I had no idea that any of this would happen. Like I never thought that like hockey cards would bring me attention, because it was a hobby for me, and it was something that I enjoyed doing as a pastime. And but I honestly like having this collection, and has been a huge blessing for myself and my family, and like just like the amount of connections that I've been able to make with people because of it has been the biggest blessing of all. And like the amount of people that I've met over the years, and the relationships that I've formed, and the friends that I've made, that's the best part of it. And also being able to meet some of the players as well, because it kind of caught their attention, has been amazing too. And I have nothing but things to be thankful for when it comes to my hockey card collection. And honestly, I don't know what else to say, because like I'm truly just like extremely grateful that people are interested and they want to learn about players, because like it's not about me. It's about the players that are in my collection and their stories that I think are most important. And those are the things that need to be shared, and that people need to hear about, because there's some really amazing stories from a lot of the hockey players in my collection, and I think it can be potentially life-changing for some people to be able to hear those stories and to understand where a lot of the players are coming from. So I honestly, man, like I'm really thankful that I've been able to have the experiences that I've had over the years, since it's kind of caught people's eye.
So actually going down that avenue, so you said you met some players. Like, what are some of the, I guess I'll ask you a two-parter question. So what, have you met most of these players? And then are there any of the players of the not so well known that have inspirational stories that you might be able to share tonight?
Yeah, I haven't met a ton. Like I met Reggie Leach. I met Aaron Asham. I met Cody McCormick. I met Brian Trottier. I've talked to a few of the players on the phone too. I met Fred Sasakamoose back in 2018 at the Summit show in Edmonton. Actually, and it was actually because of my hockey card collection, I've been able to reconnect with one of my cousins, Danny Hodgson, who is a former NHL player.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never talked to him in my life until, kind of like my hockey card collection brought us together. And he's actually a very close relation of mine. So his mom and my dad are first cousins. So we're pretty closely related. I've also I've been talking. I talk to Brandon Nolan once in a while on Instagram. I also I've had Vernon Fiddler reach out to me on Twitter, and I've also spoken with Brad Lieb over Twitter. We message each other once in a while as well. So there's been a little bit of interest from some former NHL players, and it's actually been pretty cool to be able to meet them and be able to engage with them and kind of get their thoughts of my hockey card collection.
Nice. Have you met Jordan Tutu?
I did. I did meet him. I totally forgot about that because I met him at the World Juniors in 2019 in Vancouver. He was at the game, and I just ran into him there and said hello to him and got a picture with him. And I was actually really nervous to be able to go up to him and do that.
Yeah, it's actually, again, going back to Marty McSorley. So my brother got me to introduce me to him, and he's intimidating. He's a big guy, and I'm a fairly big guy myself. When he crushed my hand, I didn't say much more after that. I was like, okay, I'm just going to let you do your thing. From time to time, I will bring up some comments, or Kent will bring up some comments, and there's an interesting one here. So Bobby Burrell, he's one of our gurus of the vintage side of hockey. He used to own, I think this means he used to own Fred Sasakamoose.
Oh,
I think it was right, Sasakamoose NHL contract.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Why? Yeah. What do you mean by owned? Why don't you still have it?
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, Bobby, if you have continue with that story, let us know. We'll put it up on screen, but we're interested in understanding that. And for those of you who are probably well known, he's very well known. Bobby he's an expert in all things on the vintage side of history, hockey history, and very much a hockey historian and very passionate about it. So if you have any questions, feel free. I'm sure he'll answer them. I should probably get you on one day, Bobby. We'll reach out to you for sure.
Yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge, that guy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I love listening to him talk when he's on with Carlos, or if he's on with Jeremy. I could just listen to him for hours.
Yeah, he's probably glowing right now, I'm sure, somewhere. Bob, are you glowing, Bobby? I hope you are. Anyways, this is the answer.
Oh, there you go.
Was purchased from me for someone who wanted to give it back to Fred. Very cool.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome. Very
cool. So I went off a deep end there. Let me go back to let's keep on track here. Where did I leave off? Sorry. I want to mention one thing about Jordan Tutu. So Jordan Tutu's story is very well documented. That is a tearjerker of a story. I highly recommend all of you to watch. I believe it's probably on YouTube, but he has had a very interesting story to get to the NHL, and during the NHL and post the NHL. So definitely pay attention to his story.
Yeah. And he has a book called All the Way.
He does as well?
Yeah, he has a book. It's called All the Way. If you can read it, it's amazing. Actually, I read it and I couldn't put it down. I read it in a day because I was just so engaged with it.
I was like that with Theo Fleury's book, and I want to say Playing with Fire, I believe. Playing with Fire? I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, that was a book I could not put down. So in keeping with the theme about talking about former players, and you did kind of touch on it, and I want to just kind of ask you just a little more directly. So have some of the players, thank you for spreading the knowledge about Indigenous players, or have you had some cool conversational pieces around that, like specifically around that? Could you maybe elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I actually have. I've had just mentioning Vernon Fiddler once again. He sent me a message on Twitter a couple of years ago, and he said, "Hey man," he's like, I think you have a really cool project going on, and I want to thank you for including me in it and for recognizing me." And he offered to send me some autographs and things like that, but I never did take him up on it. And cool thing is he lives here in Kelowna, and he's an assistant coach with the Rockets now. So if I ever run into him, be like, "Hey man, where's my autographs?" I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that.
or tickets to the Rockets games.
Yeah. And there was another player from the San Jose Sharks, Dodie Wood. He played a couple seasons enforcer back in the 90s. And when my story was first posted on the APTN, well, APTN is the Aboriginal People's Television Network in Canada. It was posted on there, and he contacted the writer of it, and he said, "I really want to thank Naim for including me in this, and if he wants me to autograph his hockey card for him, please tell him to send it to me, and I'll send it back to him." But I never did. Cool. I never did because I don't like bugging people. Sure. So I feel like I really appreciate the gesture, but like I don't want to kind of like bug people in that way, I guess.
I'm the same way. I refuse to stand in a line or ask anyone for an autograph or bug them while they're on the street. So I'll see some players walk by, and I'm like, no, let them have their time. So I'm the same as you. I don't like bugging people. I've also had some people say they would send me extra wire, and I just haven't taken them up on it. So I know what it feels like. It feels like I feel weird asking, so I just don't do it. So that's actually really cool that you got into that, and it's very cool that you have that. I want to say the rapport with these players. A lot of people don't get that. Like a lot of people grow up dreaming that they could talk to certain players, but the fact that your collection touched an emotional nerve and collecting nerve at the same time, and they reached out to you, is even more cooler. It's even better than getting a retweet almost, right? That's a personal collection, and that's something you'll take with you forever and ever, plus a day. Plus your kids are going to learn that as well, because I'm imagining as you get older, your kids are getting older, you'll pass on the knowledge to them, and I would really hope that they carry on in Daddy's footsteps and do this as well.
We'll see.
So I'm going to ask you an unfair question, because I'm sure you love every single card in your collection. It's like asking a parent, do you have a favorite child? Well, they can never answer that question. So in your collection, do you have a personal favorite?
Personal favorite player or card?
Either or.
Well, my all-time favorite Indigenous player is Jordan Tutu. I've been watching him from the time he was in junior, and I remember the documentary that you're referring to, Amit, back in like 2002 or 2003, was shortly after his brother had passed. And I remember hearing the story about that, and I remember following Jordan's career after that, and all through junior on the World Junior team for Team Canada back in 2003. And when he came in the NHL, he was one of the bigger rookies, like bigger name rookies of that rookie card class back in 2003-04. And I couldn't afford his cards back then, like a lot of his nicer cards, because some of his cards were pretty pricey, and they're comparable to a lot of the bigger rookies at that time. And I was a university student, so I didn't get a lot of his cards. I was like buying lower end stuff like OPG and like Pacific Complete and just like MVP and victory. Like I was trying to get some of those cards, but the bigger cards I couldn't get. And I just followed him all the way through his career. And when I got the chance to read his book, I honestly, like I said, like I was just so engaged with it, and I connected with him in a lot of ways, because like you don't, when you see the players on TV, you don't hear their stories or where they're coming from, and he laid it all out there. And like the things that he shared in his book are what a lot of marginalized people go through, and a lot of people who are facing intergenerational trauma. And like that's what I connected to, because I felt a lot of my upbringing and the experiences I had were very similar to his, and I felt connected to him in that way because of that. And a lot of the negative things that he had impacting his life, I had a lot of the same things in my life, and I just felt a connection that way, and it made me appreciate him even more, and really respect him even more for having the guts to be able to share that with people, because a lot of people they keep that really close to themselves and they don't let people know. And I think when someone's on in a position that he is, and to be able to share that this is what I went through, and this is kind of where I'm at in my life, like I think that is really impactful to people, because they see someone who's famous and who's played at the highest level of hockey in this entire world, that he can make it, and he can also address and face the things that he needs to change in his life, is very inspirational. And that just there's a lot of players with stories like his, but I just appreciated him even more, because I loved the way he played, and then adding all that on top of it, it was just like super cool that he was able to be in the NHL and like have an impact, because he was pretty impactful player for quite a while, and important part of the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm having flashbacks of his documentary, and I won't rehash it on here because there's a lot in there to discuss. There's a lot of topics in there that are very important for Canadian history and just for general history, to understand what people go through. But our show, Kent and I, when we put this on, we were trying to do something different, and we wanted to be about diversity, inclusivity, right, and the culture. So this is part of sharing. Naim's story helps that. I hope that people get inspired and educated while watching the show. But one thing, going back to Jordan too, to what liked him, is he was an enforcer, and he was tough. And I used to he would lay out some guys hard. But you said, he played hard, but he's doing a lot of charitable work still. So he may not be as heard of right now, but he's still doing a lot of work in the community. So I have a lot of respect for that. Mm-hmm. We have some questions, so I'm just going to bring a couple things up. So Peeps is asking, anyone bringing great stories like these into other sports? I'm sure there are. I don't know all of them, but as Kent and I meet more and more people through our social media journey and through Naim's connection, we're definitely reaching out to more people. So if we find out, we'll definitely let you know. Our good buddy Al has a question for you. What's the oldest card in your collection?
That would be this card right here. This is 1933-34 V252 Canadian chewing gum. Yeah. It's Clarence Taffy Abel, and this is his rookie card. So this is also one of my favorite cards. There we go.
Nice. And then we have a couple other questions. Give me 1 second here.
One's from Bobby.
From Bobby? Let's go, Bobby. So, Naim, could you tell us the earliest Indigenous hockey card that you know of or have?
Oh, that would be the card I just shared. So that was 1933-34 Clarence Taffy Abel.
Nice. Is there anything earlier than that, or is that the actual earliest one?
That's the earliest card.
Okay.
There wouldn't have been another card for about 6 years after that.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. What's the oldest artifact you own of Indigenous NHL rookie cards? That's not a card. Do you have anything?
Not a card.
If it doesn't have to be a card, but it's the oldest.
Like memorabilia.
I have a matchbook. I can show you a matchbook.
Yeah.
Memorabilia. So this is This is a matchbook from Clarence Taffy Abel's Log Cabin Cafe.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
That's really cool.
yeah, on the back there's like a bio. It talks about him winning a silver medal with the U.S. Olympic team in 1924 and won a Stanley Cup in 1928.
Huh.
And just some general information about him. And this is also a matchbook too. It's considered a card. It's listed on his card listings on Hockey Card Database. But it's also a matchbook, and both of those are from the 1930s. They're pretty cool.
Wow.
Actually, you should maybe take this opportunity to educate some of us on some of the Stanley Cup winners. We were talking the other day, and I didn't know. So why don't you elaborate a little bit?
So even before the NHL was the NHL, there were Indigenous players who were winning the Stanley Cup. So I actually have this 1992 Highliner Centennial Collectors Series card. And this is the Winnipeg Victorias. And on this card is Rod Flett, who is Métis, and he won a Stanley Cup with the Winnipeg Victorias back in 1896. And then his brother Magnus joined them, and he won a couple Stanley Cups with the team as well.
So Bobby actually says there are 2 variations of Taffy's Cabin matchbook. So this is why we have Bobby in the background.
I'll have to look for it.
So now you know. Take one off there. All right, so Kent, you've got some good questions coming up. I'll let you go next.
Sure. So Naim, besides hockey, is there any other sports that you collect?
Yeah, I do. I actually have a small basketball and football collection. And the reason why I collect those sports is because I'm a big sports fan, and actually I grew up playing basketball, and I actually never really played hockey before. Like I taught myself how to skate. I taught myself how to play hockey. I played mostly shinny out on the ice and played a lot of road hockey, but I grew up in a low income neighborhood and couldn't afford to play hockey, couldn't afford equipment, couldn't afford fees, couldn't afford to travel. And so I was like, I fell in love with hockey. That was the first love in my life when it comes to sports. And I dreamed about being a hockey player, and it just wasn't happening. And I discovered basketball, and I started playing basketball, and I got good at basketball. And that is what, like, when I was growing up as a teenager, I feel like that's what sustained me and like fulfilled me in my life, was being able to play sports and play basketball. And actually, I played 1 year of college basketball in Alberta. So I played at Concordia University College. It's called Concordia University of Edmonton now. But when I played, it was called Concordia University College of Alberta. And I played there for a year, and then I graduated, and I just continued playing, and I continued coaching. And I love college basketball. I love watching March Madness. I love watching the season throughout, and I love collecting basketball cards because, like, it's so different to me. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, I love my collection, and like every card in my collection to me is a good collection. But when I'm buying packs of hockey, I don't like the cards. But when I buy a pack of basketball cards, every card to me is a good card. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's like some underlying thing there that I have against hockey, because I felt like when I was a kid, I felt like my heart was broken because I couldn't play hockey.
Right.
And maybe I'm hanging on to something like that. But when I open up a pack of basketball cards and I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is so cool. But like, that's kind of like the differences between like collecting basketball and hockey for me, is except for my collection, which is like become a passion for me. But that's kind of why I play. Why I collect basketball cards, because I have experience playing basketball. When I watch the game, I have a good idea of what's going on. And because I don't have the hockey experience, I kind of know what's going on just from watching hockey over the years. But when I watch a game of basketball, I can see what's happening on the court and kind of understand what's going on.
Hence the basketball net behind you.
Yep. Yeah.
Nice. So when you're looking for Indigenous players and their cards, how much research actually goes into that for you?
Well, when I first started, like I was going on message boards, I was going on websites, newspaper articles, and I try to vet the players a little bit better these days, and I try to get multiple sources for the information, and so it could be hours. Like I'm currently researching, 4 or 5 different players right now, and just going through Google and looking through different websites and different news articles just to find information about players. And because people approach me and they like quite often they'll tell me, "Did you know so and so is Indigenous?" And I like, if I don't know, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. That's so cool." And then before I put them in my collection, I want to make sure that the information is coming from another source, and that because what's happened in the past is, like, I'll give an example, and it's actually something that's happened recently.
Okay.
Through a friend of mine who is a journalist, who actually I met through my hockey card collection. We become friends. He did a story about my collection back in 2017, and we've become friends. He was doing another article where he reached out to a couple of players, Jamie and Sean Rivers, and there's multiple news outlets online that report them as being Indigenous. But when he talked to them, he asked them about it, and he said he told me that they told him that they weren't Indigenous, and they don't know how it got out there, but they have been claiming it themselves, even though it's on multiple websites and multiple news articles. So I try and make sure that today, like, I put my research in, and that I know that the sources that they're coming from are, they're going to be reliable. And a part of that, like, also comes from me being a university student and going into grad studies and doing that kind of research. So I honestly, like, I can't even count how many hours I put into doing research, but it's fun to me. I enjoy it. Like, even if I find out a player is not Indigenous, like, just finding out all their background and then, like, looking at their stats, like, I enjoy doing that stuff, like, all the time. Like, I'll be on Hockey Database, Hockey DB, and just looking at multiple players and looking at their stats through the years, and I love that kind of stuff.
That's really cool.
I do that with so when I'm busting hockey card wax or old packs or something, I'll see a player I haven't heard of, an obscure one. I'm like, I've never heard of this player. I'll go look them up. And actually, you'll find out, like, some amazing. Just last week, I was looking at Jim. So Jim Kite is a player I admired growing up. I'm hearing impaired, so Jim Kite as well is also hearing impaired, and he played for the Jets. And I found out, just a few weeks ago through LinkedIn, of all places, that he's I believe, a dean of a college. I'm like, wow, like,
wow.
Yeah, so he's gone on. So he's on my bucket list to get on this show. So I'm working on that angle. The second thing, in terms of doing your research, if anyone out there knows, I kind of sent a name down a rabbit hole 2 days ago, and I could have sworn I was right, but I might be wrong. So I had thought that Joe Juno, who played for the Caps way back in the day, was an Indigenous player. So if anybody has any information, please share with us, because after 2 days of looking, I can't find it. I've seen hints, but I can't find any corroboration saying that he was. I mean, sorry. Go ahead.
Joe Juno would be a welcome addition to my collection. He was a great player. I loved watching him from when, like, he was on the Olympic team and got into the NHL. He was just a talented guy.
So speaking of research, before I get into the next question, I don't know if any of you have seen that Ancestry commercial about this Ronald Wang, this Asian hockey grandfather player, apparently a hockey player. I've tried looking up this guy. I think Ancestry made him up. So if anybody's out there watching can prove that this Ronald Wang guy is actually a hockey player, because I have been not able to find any history on this guy. So I think his Ancestry made him up for this commercial. Just saying.
Jeez.
So speaking of that, have you ever is there a collecting community that also shares the same passion as yourself for Indigenous players? And if yes, how did you find them or meet them?
Most of the people that I've met over the years is through Instagram.
Okay.
There's a few player collectors of Indigenous players on Instagram. There's a few of them who are Indigenous, and they live in like First Nations communities. And the big focus is like a certain player who's Indigenous. So I know a guy back home. He's a big Ethan Bear collector. And there's also a guy who's actually from a community that's close to mine. So he lives probably about an hour and a half where I'm from, and his community's isolated too. But he likes picking up Indigenous players. But he said like since he found my website and he's able to like see like the broadness of players, that he knows who he wants to collect now, and he's trying to put a collection of his own together. And then there's a ton of player collectors on Instagram. There's people who collect Carey Price, Zach Cloud, Ethan Bear. They just have monster collections too. I'm talking like high gloss young guns of Carey Price. Ethan Bear 101s like from the Cop. It's so impressive. Like I can't believe the stuff that they have. And those like some of those people are non-Indigenous, but they always acknowledge like the Indigenous ancestry of the players that they're collecting.
It would have been really epic if Ethan was drafted by the Bruins.
Oh yeah,
that would have been awesome. Yeah. I thought that I remember. So I didn't even know. So here's just a quick little tidbit on how powerful your messaging is for me. So I had no idea Ethan Bear was Indigenous. I had no idea Trache was Indigenous. And now when I look at stuff, I have that in the back of my head. So when I heard the name Ethan Bear, I didn't know at the time he was Indigenous, but I think, oh man, he was only drafted by the Bruins. Now that I know he's Indigenous, it's even more meaningful to imagine if he was drafted by the Bruins. It'd be awesome.
I don't think a lot of people know that even Carey Price has an Indigenous background.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. And he's a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah. TJ Oshie too. A lot of people don't
TJ
know.
Oshie as well?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and there's a good article online about his Indigenous ancestry. And I think he grew up in Washington State, and then they moved back to his home community. And while he was there, he received a traditional name. And all that's in the article. It's pretty cool information. But it's funny that like at the beginning of the show, you mentioned that when you're talking about a lot of the names of these Indigenous players who've been in the NHL, and you compared it to say Russia, for example, and you were able to recognize a Russian last name compared to someone who's from North America. And the reason I would say like probably the reason for that is like a lot of us have. I would say all of us, like Indigenous people, like First Nation, Métis, Inuit people, have been given more European or anglicized last names when Europeans first arrived over here. And when they were going into residential school, they weren't allowed to acknowledge their culture, their background. They weren't allowed to acknowledge the names that they were given in their communities. They weren't allowed to speak their language. It was really all an attempt to take that away from First Nations people. And even my last name, the story I heard about my last name is that it comes from the church. That there was at the residential school, there was a priest who was giving out last names, and they called us Cardinal in relation to the cardinal who is in the Catholic Church. So that's what I've been told about cardinals. And cardinals are everywhere. You go all across Canada. You throw a rock and you're gonna hit a cardinal. I'm just kidding. We're everywhere.
Interesting. It's an interesting but sad story, and that's something that every Canadian kid, and definitely my kids, will be reading and learning from for sure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Actually, I guess it's my turn to start asking questions. Even though I talk a lot, I do enjoy talking, so I should put more pauses in this, Kent, so you can actually get more airtime. Okay, so keeping with the theme of Indigenous players, obviously for this show is, have you looked into collecting other sports of featuring Indigenous players? For example, we know you do hockey, but do you do basketball? Do you do baseball? Just to kind of give people a feel for that.
Yeah, no, I've looked into Indigenous players, but I've never actually thought about collecting Indigenous their sports cards like of Indigenous players. And the reason for that is like I've even as it is, like I've expanded my collection so big right now. Like I have all these like side projects going. Like I have Young Guns exclusive, like a Young Guns project going of like every Indigenous player. So I collect their exclusives, their high gloss, their the gold rainbow foils, their silver foils, their like, their acetates, all these different parallels of Young Guns. I have about 5 player collections that are focused just on single players, and my collection is like expanding even as it is. And I've always wanted to try to keep it as tight as possible, because I know that this could get out of control if I wanted. I could start buying like jerseys. I could go into like memorabilia, like all different directions. And I want to keep it as tight as I can just to be able to manage it. And I have looked into other sports, like for instance, like basketball. I only know like of a few basketball players that like we talked about this the other night, and like Cherokee Parks, Kyrie Irving, and then you reminded me about Ron Baker. And then also there's been quite a few football players like Sam Bradford, Jim Thorpe, just names like that. Like just even being able to know who they are it's important to me. And but I don't know if I would collect them, just because like I know, like I was saying, I know how out of hand this can get if I really wanted it to be.
So Naim, how many pieces would you say you have in your collection today already?
Well, I have 90. I have 90 different players, but as far as individual pieces go, I don't know, maybe 1,500.
Wow, that's really good. That's really good.
Yeah. I haven't counted. I remember when I was a kid, I used to count my cards all the time, and like the more you had, the better. I was like, I had over 3,000.
Yeah, that's another rabbit hole, and that's not a theme for this show. Maybe we'll do a show just on hoarding, because I know I could benefit from not doing that. And it's true, actually, when we were talking, so Naim and Kent and I were talking on Sunday. The one thing I love about doing this show and just having conversations, having the internet at your fingertips, is quickly you go down these rabbit holes and start looking up things. So yeah, Kent actually is it's just like Bobby is our hockey historian. Kent's pretty good at, I would say, as being at the baseball historian. So he collects cut autos and stuff. So we went down this rabbit hole. It was awesome. So one thing, so thanks for answering that question. So one thing I was thinking about, and we talked about it on Sunday, is I had this idea that, you could create a PSA registry of your collection. And just so for people who are out there, there are some people out there who are more knowledgeable than I, but this is basically how I understand it. So at PSA, you can create a registry, submit it for review, and it'd be accepted by the PSA board, I would say. And I thought it'd be really neat for Naim to do one on Indigenous players, because it would be fairly interesting to kind of see, if people would try to get the best grade of each card out there, and then you could build another community that way, and it'll be a fun endeavor. So I don't know if I know you hadn't thought about that before, but Naim, I'll throw that out there, and maybe it's an idea for you to consider.
Yeah, that's cool. And to be honest, I don't grade cards myself. Like I have some graded cards, but I didn't even know you could do that. And actually, like when you brought that up, I was like, that's pretty cool. I actually think I might pursue that.
That's another financial rabbit hole, but it's a fun one. And at least all your cards are protected and slabbed, right? There's that.
Yeah.
So my favorite Indigenous players, I had to think about this, and the first player that came to my mind was Chris Simon. I loved Chris Simon growing up. Now, some people who are San Jose Sharks haters probably won't like him, but that's a different story. But Chris Simon actually played in the KHL. So the question I was going to ask you is, I know you collect NHL themed rookie cards, but do you collect any rookie cards or cards of Indigenous players overseas, in the KHL? Like, how far does your passion reach?
Well, to be honest, I don't have too many. I do have some players from other players cards from other leagues, but like I said, I've been trying to keep my collection pretty tight, and it is something that I've been asked just in person if I would ever, like, not on any like not by any like show hosts or anything, if I would consider doing that, but just like I've had random people ask me if I would consider collecting, guys who have been drafted and never, quite made the NHL. They got to the AHL and then when played pro overseas. But I have a very limited collection for that part. Like I have a few Lacey Rabbit cards, and there's purpose behind every one of these cards. Like I talk to Lacey every once in a while over social media. Like him and I, like, we know the same people. He's actually come to watch me play basketball before, and because we're in the same community while there was like a hockey tournament going on and a basketball tournament, and he come to watch one of my games, and I would go watch his games. And I've been a fan of his since he's been with Saskatoon Blades, and we have mutual friends. And one of my friends actually told me that when Lacey was playing for the Saskatoon Blades, he would always go to the schools and talk to the kids. Whenever he was asked, he wouldn't even hesitate. He would just go. And he said he's honestly one of the good guys out there. And I've always had respect for Lacey, and I've stayed connected with him through social media, like I said. So I have a couple of his cards. I also have a card of Shane Peacock. Shane Peacock is from Enoch Cree Nation, which is right outside of Edmonton, and he's considered like a local hockey hero in Enoch because he got drafted to the Pittsburgh Penguins. He played in some preseason games. He trained with Mario Lemieux, but he went and played pro overseas. Very skilled hockey player. He's played in the Spengler Cup. And I know him too because I used to work in Enoch Cree Nation. I was teaching there for a while, and I had a lot of we had like a lot of the same people, like same acquaintances, and I got to meet him that way and talk to him that way. And he was very well known in the community. So I collected one of his cards, and then another guy named Jerry Cunningham who played pro overseas. He never made it to the NHL, but he played very high level pro hockey in Europe. He played 4 years of the NCAA Division I, and I know him personally too. Like, he's one of my buddies, and he used to be a coach of a hockey team in Enoch, and that's how I met him. And we just connected through hockey and became buddies that way. But and another card that I would want to collect is there's a player named Barry Kabab. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He played for the Oshawa Generals. And he played in the 80s for the Flyers. He played some preseason games for the Flyers, and he's passed away. But one of my friends knew him. That was his uncle. And the story that Barry had, so Barry passed away, I think it was in 2003. He was on a tractor. They were doing some work, and he had his kid with him. And his kid was in the cab with him, and the door swung open and his kid fell out, and he jumped out to grab his kid, and he pushed his kid out of the way, and he got ran over by the tractor, and he passed away. So it was a big loss for their community, and he's a Anishinaabe guy, and a lot of people know his story, and he's very highly respected in the Anishinaabe community, and that's a card that I would love to have in my collection too, just because of the connections he has to his community. And it's a very hard card to find. And I was actually talking to someone just today about that card, and he has a card with the Oshawa Generals police set, I think 82, 83 maybe. And I think that's his only card that he has. And I seen one pop up on eBay recently, and I was talking to my friend who is his nephew,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him that this card come up. So he went ahead and bought it, but I haven't seen another copy of that card, and that's a card that I would love to have in my collection too.
So you are getting it, or he got it?
He got it. Yeah. But that's a card I would love to have in my collection.
What's the name? What's the name again?
Barry Tababangdum.
Okay, you'll have to text me that name, but I think I have an Offer General set. I just don't know if I have that one. I'll check.
All right.
Cool.
So Naim, when you mentioned the Saskatoon Blades, have you started collecting? Are you like just strictly NHL only, or have you touched upon CHL cards at all?
Yeah, I have a few CHL cards. Like I have pre-rookies of players. Actually, I have some right now. I just posted some on my Instagram page, but I've been working on this. This is the 1998 Bowman CHL.
Oh, cool.
So I'm working on the Jonathan Chichu Rainbow, and I posted on my Instagram. I just got a couple more cards to add to it, and they're actually like, you would think like, you know, Bowman CHL, like you can go anywhere and find them, but like some of these parallels, like the refractors and like the stamp cards, like the numbered cards, they're like almost impossible to find. And I've been working on this for about 4 or 5 years to try to get this rainbow done. But I have a number of other CHL cards too, like and they're very modern cards too, like just
right.
Yeah.
Now, is it because you think that Bowman set that wasn't highly broken, or there's just not enough of it out there?
I just don't like. I don't think it's out there. Like you can find like the regular Bowman and Bowman Chrome versions.
Oh, okay.
But like when it comes to the refractors and like the numbered cards, they're really hard to track down for certain players. And Jonathan Chichu is one of those players. Yeah, it's a cool set. I love it, and like the refractors are beautiful. Like this is one of the refractors. This is the OPG International.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so yeah, they're really nice cards, and hopefully I'll finish those soon. It's about the process, not the end goal, right?
Exactly, for sure, absolutely. When it comes to PCing, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that. So speaking of that, so what would you consider as your greatest accomplishment so far with your PC? If there is one.
I don't even know. Like, I guess like I don't know if you're talking about a single card or just overall.
Either or.
I don't know. I think just overall, like the things that people have shared with me about my hockey card collection and the things that they've learned from it. I actually have done a couple presentations about it, and have a lot of people come up to me and say that they didn't know that like certain players were Indigenous. They didn't know there was that many Indigenous players in the NHL. They didn't know that like Indigenous people had such an impact on the game of hockey. And you know, I think that is like, to me, that's the biggest accomplishment, because I'm a teacher, and I always want I want people to take something away that they've learned from my collection. You know, it's nice to show it off sometimes, like, hey, check out my check out my high gloss, or like check out like my 1-of-1 or whoever. Like that's cool, but like the biggest thing for me is to being able to like have something that people can take away and that they feel like they've learned from, or like find, you know, maybe some inspiration from, or something like that. So
I have so Bobby Burrell has come through with something that he mentioned earlier, so I'm going to bring it up on screen.
Go for it.
Oops, this is my Comty. You don't want that. Let me try this again. There you go.
Oh,
there
nice.
Is the taffy. He mentioned that there were 2 taffy variants.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Bobby's name kept flashing by on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, I got to go check what that is. I'm trying to concentrate on the show. I'm glad I paid attention. So this is the variants.
That is cool. Thanks, Bobby. I'll keep an eye out for that version.
That's
there you go.
Yeah, so that one photo of Taffy Abel, like that, is almost that is a very common photo on like all of his cards. Like,
oh, okay, yes,
yeah, Yeah, so I gotta look for that other one. Appreciate that a lot, Bobby.
No worry. Yeah, thank you, Bobby. And I'll close my Comp C windows next time I'm sharing. Oops.
Yeah.
And it's true. I have my eBay windows open. I have my Comp C windows open because you never know when a deal might come around the corner. So, anyways, sorry, that was a quick segue. I wanted to make sure you saw that before I forgot. Go ahead, Ken.
Sure. Is there a particular card out there that you would say is a holy grail, or do you even own it?
Well, a card that I've been looking for a long time is Jordan 22 Young Guns High Gloss.
Oh,
So I would say that could be like that would be a holy grail for me, just because like I've seen one in my whole time collecting, and I was on eBay and I missed it, and I wish I would have won it, because like I thought I would be able to find another one, but I haven't. I've been looking for years, and it's in my saved searches, and like to get notifications like if one pops up, and nothing has popped up on eBay, and I would say that. And then there's like some other cards too, like cards that are like kind of out of my reach, like Carey Bryce parallel Young Guns, like the exclusives or the high gloss, like those are out of my price range in today's market, and I would love to have one of those, just because like I could add it to my my Young Guns collection, and it just probably like the one of the best goalies out there, and to have his Young Guns exclusive or high gloss would be amazing.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's got to be pricey, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, Naim, how long ago was the last time you saw that 22 high gloss? How long has it been now?
Probably right, like maybe 2016.
And not another one has popped up, eh? Wow.
No, and I think it sold for about $90, and I think that's pretty fair for that card.
So I know we're at the hour mark, so I want to make sure, Naim, you're okay for a few more minutes to keep going. Got a couple of last questions, and
Sure.
We'll wrap it up. So, we really racked our brain in terms of coming up with a question that you haven't been asked before. So hopefully this is unique enough. I did share with you on Sunday, but I'm going to ask you here. So, what would you consider to be the most interesting fact that people are not aware of when it comes to Indigenous hockey history and hockey cards? Something that the world would benefit from knowing.
Yeah, I think like just going back to that knowledge that that there were Indigenous players winning the Stanley Cup before the NHL was the NHL. When I found that out a few years back when I started my collection, like I had no idea that there was Métis hockey players back in the 1890s who were winning the Stanley Cup, and like the Stanley Cup is like the highest trophy you can win at any level of hockey in the world, and and I think that would blow people's minds, and to be able to know that Indigenous hockey history goes back that far, and possibly even farther, because there's a lot of there's articles on the internet. There's been news stories that that there have been Indigenous people, the Mi'kmaq people, invented hockey, or the game of hockey came from a game that the Mi'kmaq people played. And a lot of the first hockey sticks also came from a design of a stick that was used by those people when they were playing their game. So, I mean, you can Google all that stuff and look it up, but, like Indigenous people's impact on the game of hockey goes back, over 100 years, back to 1800s. And I think that people should be aware of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kent, to get the last one.
So, Naim, we tend to ask all of our guests this one particular question, and especially when we get towards the end of the show. So, I'll just ask you straight out: what inspires you?
What inspires me, and like what keeps me motivated, is I think that I think that this being able to share my collection with young people is the most important thing for me, because I know that all these players in my collection, like I said, like they all have a story, and a lot of them come from similar places that a lot of Indigenous people come from, and they share the same experiences, the same stories. And when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of role models around me who were Indigenous, and today that there's a ton of like amazing role models out there, and you just look at my hockey card collection. There's over 90 in my collection. There's 91, but you look in my collection, and those players are all role models, because they all have a story, and a lot of them come from First Nations communities. Francis Sakamoose went through the residential school system. That in itself, and for him to be able to make it to the NHL is just unbelievable and amazing. And I think that like the impact of potential impact that my collection could have, especially for young Indigenous kids, to want to be able to chase their dreams and reach their goals, whether it's in hockey or whether it's in school or some other sport, whatever it is they love doing. Like these players are all examples of being able to reach your highest dreams in your life. And even the barriers that they face, the marginalization that they face, I think that those stories can be used to motivate young kids, whether you're Indigenous or not. Like the stories that these players have, that is what inspires me, and that's what wants me to be able to share my hockey card collection. And one of the focuses I had when I was putting my website together was that I want to be able to tell these stories in a good way when I was writing the bios, and I want to be able to tell people what these players are doing today, because a lot of them are in positions where they're giving back to the community, or they're giving back to kids. There's a lot of players that are doing things like that, and they're sharing the successes that they've had, the life that they had with young people. And I think that like that kind of stuff that they're doing, that needs to be shared, and that their stories need to get out there, because they can change people's lives.
Cool. That's a really good answer, and it's a unique answer, and it's something that we appreciate. Now we're at the hour and 7 mark. So I want to make sure Naim doesn't lose his voice, and other stuff.
Or get in trouble.
Or get in trouble. Yes, the wives want to back in doing out of TV land and out of the computer world. So, I want to first thank you for taking the time to come to the show. This was definitely a bucket list moment for us. I'm really happy to have got this content on our live show. And for those who aren't aware, we're going to be in June is, correct me if I'm wrong, Naim, June is National Indigenous Month. So Naim is actually going to be back on June 1st, which is a Tuesday. So the first Tuesday in June is the start of the month for Indigenous History Month. Sorry, History Month. And we're going to do something unique. So when Naim and I and Kenton will work on that in the background. For next week, we're going to have Jeremy from Sports Card Live and Carlos from Because I'm Carlos on. And we haven't really decided what the format will be. And I think we'll probably do more of an open air, ask questions and have fun and hang out. We won't do anything overly prescribed. For those of you who don't know, it takes a lot of work to put on a show. So it'll be nice to kind of do things in the background. Sorry, there was one question from Maureen that I didn't flash up on here.
Oh, right here. I got it.
You got it? Okay. So there's a kid from Campbell River in the WHO right now. She's hoping for big things from him.
That's awesome. I'll look the player up.
Awesome. So I'm going to, we're going to, hold on, I got a couple more comments here. Again, Naim, Kenton and I thank you very much. We can't wait to have you back. And I appreciate all the knowledge and everything you're doing. Keep it up. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, totally. It's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me to come on the show. It was a bucket list moment for me too.
Awesome. So hang out in the background. We're just going to end the show, and then we'll just close it up that way. Perfect. So for all of you for joining, thank you very much.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.